Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We talk everything animation here, including Coco, which we'll be getting into today. I'm Beatriz Mourad, and today I'm joined by Alex Bonillo.
Hola.
Andy Potter.
Hey there.
And Steve Zec.
Hello.
I'm really excited for this podcast. Coco is the latest Pixar film. It was released last week and has topped the weekend box office with $49 million, which makes me super happy. Please go to the movies, support your local theaters, or else they're going to go away. But before we get started, I'm letting everyone know that yes, we will be getting into spoilers. But for those of you who are listening who haven't seen Coco, one, go watch it. And two, we will be starting off with a brief non-spoiler discussion. Feel free to keep on listening afterward, but I urge you to pause this podcast, go watch the movie, then come back. Find out more about this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can subscribe to us on iTunes at overlyanimated.com/iTunes, where we appreciate your star ratings, or search for Overly Animated on your favorite podcatcher. All right, so before we dive into this wonderful, wonderful world, I want to take a quick moment to talk about our not-so-great world, continuing the exceptional reporting on sexual misconduct and abuse of power in the entertainment world and beyond. Last week, The Hollywood Reporter published an article about Pixar co-founder John Lasseter and his inappropriate behavior in the workplace. That same day, Lasseter announced that he would be taking a 6-month sabbatical. When I think of all the reports from Weinstein to Spacey, this is one that hits closest to home for me. Pixar films are part of the reason why I'm talking to you guys today. Separating the art from the artist is not easy. Not everyone can do it, and it's fine if you can't. I will say, however, that it takes hundreds of people to make this type of film possible. John Lasseter was an executive producer on Coco, which is a much more distant role, usually, than a typical producer. But I can't tell you how involved he was in this project, but he alone didn't make this movie, and Coco is so much more than he could ever be. But let's actually talk about Coco. Alex, give me your overall impressions of this film, but no spoilers. We're going to get to that a bit later.
Right. I think in the big picture is a really a film that emotionally works, like something that I expect out of Pixar at this rate. It's been a bit of a week's patch if you think about things like The Good Dinosaur and all. But Coco did a really good job of hooking me in with the story very early on. There's no real characters that I found annoying or anything of that sort. It's a very beautiful film to look at. Like there's no denying that. All the designs look really good. And and even with the humor, like, because into this I was going in with the idea of, like the Book of Life, like that's the thing that this has been compared to since like the concept art came out. But when I think of the Book of Life, that was a very humor heavy thing, but it didn't really want to focus on the emotional stuff. Whereas this feels the opposite. Like it touches on humor, but it's not really as joke heavy as I expected it to be. Whereas it went really hard on the themes and the emotion. And so I think it works as a good complement to this little niche of Day of the Dead movies in animation.
Yeah, totally. Steve, what are your overall impressions?
It's a good movie. In some parts it was go by the book, but I have to admit the twist. I'm not going to say what it is.
Don't say anything.
I won't say. I'm just saying the twist actually surprised me. Normally, I'm very good with seeing the twist like way ahead of time, but it actually got me for once. Maybe because I wasn't on point. Maybe because I just got there trying to find parking and I wasn't thinking straight. But, but yeah, it was good. It was. I liked all the characters. Personally, though, the first act dragged a little for me. The second act, once they get to the second act, it really picked up for me. I can't say what more I want to say without spoiling, but it was a good movie. It definitely wasn't boring. It had me edge of my seat. I didn't really fall asleep or nothing. And at the end, it definitely got very tearful for me at the very end when whatever happened. It delivered. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Andy, what about you?
This movie is the movie I envisioned when I heard that Pixar was bought by Disney. This is like the perfect mixture of the beautiful visuals that Pixar makes and the music that Disney is known for. And it's not just like a Disney musical shoved into the Pixar aesthetics. It's actually, the music is the lifeblood of this movie, and it's just so well done. Like every scene, you can feel the Mexican influences in every soundtrack, not just the times when Miguel's singing, and it's just so well done. Like this is just a treat in all descriptions you can use. Like the visuals are just to die for. The music is just sublime at parts, and I'm not trying to get all like, I just really love this movie. I just really loved it, every part. There were some problems with the plot that it wasn't the greatest, it wasn't the strongest plot, but it was good enough to carry this very beautiful film with a very, very well done soundtrack and it was just great. I really, really liked this movie.
Also, I mean, I agree with you completely. Like, I adore this film. Like, I just, a lot of things that, like, look, Latin representation, one of the things that always worries me about it is that people kind of generalize and make this they make Latinos like kind of seem homogenous when in fact it couldn't be anything from the truth. And I think this is Coco in particular is such a great celebration of like Mexican culture and just this beautiful dive into not just the Day of the Dead, but also, the music, the just little things. And, what I really spoke to me and what really hit me is because, there is distinctions within the Latin umbrella, but there are certain things, some little things that are similar, like just the way people are affectionate towards each other. It's like, my family is like this. The emphasis of family being such an important thing. That's so much part of the general Latin culture that this movie, even though it isn't 100% it isn't like, I don't see it and be like, oh yes, this is just like my Venezuelan upbringing. It's not, but even then I was like, but there's something in there that still like resonates with me in that it may not look 100% like me, like how I have lived in my culture. It's still close enough. It's like, it's kind of like a cousin that I'm just like, oh, this is so amazing and I adore it. And I just love this movie and it was great. And I can't wait to talk to you guys more about it in the spoilers.
Yeah.
I'll just say in terms of the representation, like also I'm of Guatemalan heritage as well. So when I lived back there, like I was very in proximity to all of this. So I went to several Dia de los Muertos ceremonies in the local cemetery and all because I have friends, even though I'm not really our family was never that religious enough to really participate in it. But just seeing all the things happening was very comfortable in a sense. Like nothing stood out as wrong, which I think it's a good feeling to have. The idea that you're focusing on a tradition that is very very focused, and there's you can tell that they put time into working and making this seem as legitimate as they could, going from their outside background. And I think just in general, the whole Latin representation thing, I think the issue we have is more like volume, because I guess my thing is with the Dia de los Muertos, like that seems to be the main thing that we go to when we talk about Mexican culture in film. And it's like that part still bothers me a little, like the fact that that there isn't a room for just like a normal Mexican family drama in English language media. But with the material that they're working with, they did a really good job, and just it all felt very, very homey in a sense.
Well, I don't have as much background you do, Alice, but my mom is originally from South America, and I've been to Paraguay with her family, and yeah, it definitely reminds me of that when we've gone to visit. So, though I'm not that familiar with Dia de los Muertos, I mean, I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's a Catholic tradition, so it depends on how religious your area really is.
The thing I heard about it recently, I heard they did that about that Dia de los Muertos, an episode of Elena of Avalar, so that's how I first introduced it. So this is not new to me. Also, another Disney property.
Yeah. Just like what I love about it was just that even though like, because like my thing with like I completely agree with you, Alex, in that there needs to be a lot more like variety. Like I can understand why I'd say, for instance, in animation, you want to go into Dia de los Muertos because it's like so much like a visual kind of visually striking kind of thing. But like I completely agree that there needs to be more diversity in there. Like there's more than just this one holiday to the culture. Basically, like what I was trying to say was just simply that. For me, it was so nice to like see like something that celebrates Mexican like culture, and yet still manages to like break that barrier. Like I don't feel uncomfortable with like it being like, often I'm like, okay, here we go again. Like here we go. Like it's gonna be all about like people are gonna misunderstand this and make it seem like it's everybody when it's just one part of the Latin context. But in fact, this film didn't make me feel that way. It was celebrated Mexican culture, but I felt like it also manages to distinguish it from other cultures. Maybe it's because it was so authentic in the way it was represented. But moving on, I did not want to get into that conversation so early in.
I just want to say that I have no background in like any of you do. So if I want to be clear that if I have anything to say, please correct me, because I have no background like you guys do.
My mom is from South America, not Mexico, so I really, if this is anything to do with Mexico, I really am just as clueless.
Oh, yeah.
But you guys are a little bit closer than I am to these kinds of things.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, let's talk about the voice acting, because that's always something I always emphasize. I try to emphasize in these podcasts because it's very woefully like overlooked. So, what did you guys think of how the performances were? Alex, let's start with you.
Well, I have a bit of a different perspective since I actually went to watch the Spanish dubbed version.
Oh my god, that's amazing!
Yeah, so like I do want to say in that the only person who carries over is Gael Garcia Bernal, who voices Hector, and like he stands out in the dub. Like you can tell he's the professional of the group.
Aww.
Like he does a really good job of like expressing the emotion of that character, from the carefreeness of him in the beginning to like the real emotional part of him in the second half of the movie. So that was really good. You have Marco Antonio Solis, who used to be a member of a popular Mexican band, Los Bukis, back in the 80s. He voices the musician ancestor.
Ernesto?
I'm forgetting his name.
Ernesto?
Yes, Ernesto de la Cruz. But yeah, he did okay with. I guess they hired him mostly for his singing abilities, and it shows. Although I think he's a little weak in the final number in La Llorona. But yeah, in general, it had most of the marks of a Spanish dub. Like in general, I don't go for Spanish dubs, even if Spanish is my native language. There have only been like a handful of movies where I preferred the Spanish over the English. I'll be interested to see once I get the chance to see the English version how they compare. But I thought it just on the scale of dubs, this was a really good translation, and just the usage of Mexican slang in there was really comfortable to hear. It was just an all around good performance. Although I think Bernal stands out in the Spanish version.
Alex, actually a question. Did they have English subtitles when you saw it, or just Spanish dub?
They did have subtitles, although I wasn't reading them, so.
So, Steve, what did you think of the voice acting?
I thought the voice acting was good, was very good. I'm not familiar with really any of these voice actors. Maybe one. I heard this Gabriel guy. Maybe I've heard of him, but yeah, mostly I was just so into the story. I thought the famous musician character. What's his name?
Ernesto de la Cruz.
Ernesto. If for some reason I always thought he kind of reminded me of Ricardo Montalban. I thought that if Ricardo Montalban was still alive, he could have been a good choice to voice this character. Everyone else, like, they fit right into their roles. You get that, definitely tell he definitely had some like Latin like influences in these actors, but they also sounded like Americanized, not too Latin either. It's good balance. But But yeah, I have no complaints over any of the actors. Nobody really was bad. Which is a rarity for me. I always find one actor to complain about, like in the Frozen short. I definitely thought some of the kids were definitely amateurs, probably won a contest or something. But in this movie, top notch.
Awesome. Andy, what about you? Any comments about the voice acting?
I definitely agree with Alex that Hector was the standout. Bernal, he was the standout. He was just really good. But I also do want to say that the English voice actor for Miguel, I was surprised how good he was at injecting emotion into his voice. There's one moment that he really, you can feel the emotion that he's trying to get across to you while singing, and it's just so well done. And it was very surprising to hear from him. And I think his actor's not that old, is he? Anthony Gonzalez?
Yeah, I think they usually for the leads, they tend to be pretty young. They tend to be newcomers.
He is 11. It looks like he's 12.
Oh my god.
Has he been
he is not old.
Has he been in live action?
No, this is.
He's been in an episode of Criminal Minds.
Oh,
he was.
I agree. I think Miguel was just so wonderful and naive and such a child, but it was so great. And the way he managed to express all the necessary emotions. And yeah, Hector was great. I love Imelda. Imelda is just wonderful, and everybody will learn why when they go see this movie. But yeah, let's move into spoilers because we need to talk deep into this movie. So anyone who hasn't seen this movie, this is now the time. Go and see it, or keep listening and just know that you're going to be spoiled because that's where the fun begins. All right, you've been warned. So let's start off with these characters that I adore. All right, so what did you guys think of Miguel and his story his journey throughout this film? Andy, let's start with you. How, just overall, go as deep as you want. How did you think they expressed Miguel's story for you?
It was really well done for me. I think the first 2/3 of the movie were a lot better than the last third for the story-wise. Ernesto did a lot better as a idea than an actual character, I thought, on screen. But it was just really well done. It wasn't a very set in stone plot. There wasn't a really set in stone goal here. He had to get home, but you weren't really sure what the message was or what really Miguel was going to learn during this story. But it was really good. You felt like Miguel was lost, and you were lost with him in this plot of, what am I supposed to be learning here? Am I supposed to be learning about family? Am I supposed to be learning about music? Am I supposed to be learning about art? Am I supposed to be learning about respecting my ancestors? It really just twisted together into this really weird mixing pot in the middle of what is Miguel here to do. And he was in that with us, and it was really well done. I think that the twist of who his great-great-grandfather was a little bit... sometimes it really worked well in the film, and sometimes it really didn't. I think they held out a little too long, but it kind of looped back into itself, where it was they held out so long that I thought I was wrong in my guess of who it actually was. I was oh, is it actually Ernesto? Because they waited so long to tell us who it actually was. But it was, I think, even through to the end, it was just, I'm not sure if I want to talk about the end quite yet because it's so emotional, but it was just, that ending was just a classic Pixar thing. Just Miguel singing to his grandmother. It was, I was crying in the theater. It was very well done, and it could have been done a couple of different ways. I thought in the middle of the film that the movie would end with Miguel singing this song, and Hector would be singing it with him from the afterlife, but Coco obviously wouldn't hear him. But the way they did it with Miguel doing it alone was so much better. And this is why I don't write things, and they do. Because this was so much better and so much more emotional. And just Miguel feeling so down on himself and just being so... He just knew it was over. He just knew nothing had turned out the way he wanted it to. And you could feel that in the way he was singing, and it was so well done. Speaking of, I do want to talk about the music later because I have a lot of things to say about it. But for now, the plot was just good enough to get all these things to us. I do think it could have been a little better in expressing a direct theme at the end. The lack of a direct theme in the middle really did well for the movie, but I think it could have told us something a little more concrete towards the end. That's all.
Okay. And Alex, what about you?
Well, to me, I think we need to separate the story and the character, right? Because the story, I was enthralled from the very beginning, and just like seeing Miguel figure out how the world works down there, and trying to figure out if he can trust Hector, if he can't, and then we have all the twists and all. It all works. But as a character, I don't think he was very interesting in the end. I never really felt emotionally attached to him specifically, just like his family as a whole, yes, but Miguel didn't really have any real traits I guess I could glom onto here. But but he was useful in his purpose of just being the guy who pushes the story along and taking us through all these different parts of the world, and eventually meeting up with Ernesto in the end. So, and being the guy who Hector has to lead along. So the story was nice, but the character of Miguel himself, I felt it was relatively bland compared to the other characters in the film.
Interesting. Steve, what about you?
Oh, I like the movie. I have to admit, though, first, since I saw a trailer, I knew what the movie was about, so I knew we were going to go to the afterlife. So as the first act was going on, I'm like, can we get to the afterlife? I'm like, let's go. I'm more excited to get to that. But I enjoyed the movie. I do admit, the afterlife definitely, that world definitely sort of reminds me of Otherworld from Dragon Ball. I don't know if you've seen that, which I thought was kind of neat. Miguel, I really like Miguel. He's a character I can relate to and I get rooted for, and which is very important because he's the main character. If I can't stand the main character, how am I going to stand the movie? I gotta admit though, the twist with Miguel's great grandfather, of it, whether it's not an Ernesto, that really surprised me. Normally, I'm good with twists. I remember, when I saw Frozen, I knew immediately that Hans was going to be the villain, so I wasn't surprised there. But here, I'm I knew Ernesto was going to be the bad guy, but I thought the message was going to be more of, you have to accept that some people, members of your family, are just jerks, are not good people, and that doesn't, just because you're related to them by blood doesn't mean you're family. You do have other people you can call family. That's what I thought they were going for. But instead they go the other way in that it's Hector, and I guess every member of Miguel's family is a good person. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it worked. Liked all the characters. I can relate to the family wanted to outlaw music in the family. I got that, though I thought a little bit of a reaction. But I also understand Miguel's his plight of rebellion. I don't know if you agree with me, Beatrice, but it definitely it reminded me a bit, Miguel's infatuation with Ernesto is definitely reminded me sort of Akko and Shiny Chariot a bit too. And the ending, of course, I really got emotional at the ending when we saw Coco and her parents, and I lost it. I admit I lost it, and again, seeing also was comical the fact that her parents died younger than Coco did. So you see, Coco looks much older with her parents who look much younger, and it's definitely going on with Eclipse and her and Meteora and Star too. So.
I didn't think we were going to touch that detail this early, but I do want to say that kind of bothered me at the end. That Coco just shows up in the land of the dead all old, and all these people are already young. Do we expect all of them to have died young?
Yeah, no, it was...
Well, Hector was murdered as a young man.
Well, yeah, Hector made sense, but all the other ones, it's this really... if everyone in the afterlife is really that young, it's really depressing.
Well, we don't know how long the great grandmother died. We don't know what age she was.
Look,
at the beginning that she died before I was born. That's all we know.
Look, and we don't know how the afterlife works. Maybe they all decided. Maybe Coco just liked being that age and was like, "I'm just gonna stick to being like this." We don't know, But I will say that Alex, your point about not liking Miguel or just not really feeling anything for him, I felt that way in the beginning. in the beginning, I was like, okay, like, interesting. Like, Miguel, like, all right, sure, you're just gonna tell me the story, whatever. You're just gonna be what pushes the story forward. But by the end, he won me over. By the end, I was like, you really, like, I don't know, maybe it was just like the artist's soul in him and just everything, like him learning the importance of family, that I was just like, yeah, like, you're great. Like, you're a kid, but you're great. But I did feel, it's interesting how, like, there's, like, the third act seems to be, like, the weakest for people. And I guess, like, for most, like, that's, like, I've also been reading some, like, reviews, some, like, tweet reactions, and that seems to be, like, the consensus that just by the end, the plot just got a little bit too crazy, a little bit too convoluted and unnecessarily complex. For me, I enjoyed that because it kind of reminded me of, like, novelas and just how crazy they are. And it's like, of course he killed you. Of course he did. Like, of course he's going to be the villain. I don't know. Because I didn't know how this was going to end. And, well, yeah, please.
I knew he was going to be the bad guy. I thought maybe he actually was going to be the great-great-grandfather. I wasn't. That's the part.
Yeah. I mean, that could have been interesting, but I enjoyed the emphasis of family. I kind of was just like, yes, I could have seen him being part of the family. Like, yes, I could have seen De La Cruz being the grandfather, the great-great-grandfather, and not, like, and still being horrible. But at the same time, like, I kind of like this, I don't know, like, I feel like, I don't know, I enjoyed Hector being, like, kind of be punished for leaving his family in such a way. And then maybe the killing was a little bit too much of a touch. Maybe, yeah, please, Andy.
This was while you're saying that, this is a really dark movie. We haven't mentioned it, but half the characters in this movie are dead.
Well, of course they are. It's the afterlife.
Wow, newsflash.
Like a lot of Disney movies kind of like gloss over it. Like any other Disney movie kind of would have glossed over, but they're like, no, these people died in horrible ways. Ernesto got a bell dropped on him. Hector drank poison. Like, there's just some horrible deaths that are hinted at through this movie.
And also, Coco was obviously suffering from Alzheimer's. I mean, it's obvious there. And one question though, Ernesto, he murders somebody, and then it appears in a movie that does sort of similar story. Who does that?
Yeah, I know. That was a little bit on the nose.
And sadly, Ernesto's little story, pretty much him trying to protect his legacy, that hits very close to home nowadays, because it reminds me so much, like, he was such a big star, renowned celebrity for so long. And, it kind of reminds me sort of like of guys like Bill Cosby and guys like that whose legacy is pretty much flushed down the toilet right now.
It's kind of timely, honestly.
Yeah, odd timing with Lassiter.
Yeah, very, very true. Very insightful connection there. But, let's talk about these, like, other characters, because one thing that I did find slightly not annoying, because it's not so much of I don't know if it's necessarily a flaw, because I can understand why they didn't do it, but I do wish we did get to see more of his, like, other family members, or more of Imelda at least. Like, the film being so focused on Miguel, Hector, and De La Cruz, just kind of, not only did it make it very male-centric, but, I kind of, like, for instance, in the very beginning of the film, when how Miguel just kind of tells us the story of his family and how Imelda just kind of was like, he left her, but she made it work and she was great. I was like, give me more of that. Give me that story. Like, why?
Speaking of,
I love
those
that.
cutouts were beautiful.
Yeah, they were gorgeous. I would not have minded, like something that I found, like, frustrating was that in the film, they dealt with exposition a little bit awkwardly, in that they would explain to Miguel things that he should know already, based on, like, this is probably not his first Day of the Dead. Like, he knows Dia de los Muertos, he's part of it, like, he's been part of it, and yet here's his grandmother explaining to him why it is that they're putting these pictures up, and there's his great-great-grandmother explaining to him what these animals are, or, like, these, like, dragons are, and it's like, he knows that, though, so I would not have minded that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because as someone who didn't know this stuff, I didn't, like, process that. And now that you've mentioned it, it's so obvious that he should have known those things.
Well, I took it as because they make it pretty clear that Miguel didn't really care about Day of the Dead up until now. It seems that him walking out on these conversations has been also a yearly tradition. So like I just took it as they need to tell him this, like, this is why this is important. This is why you have to focus, and Miguel just never does. At least that the movie translated that to me well enough.
Totally. And like that is interesting because like one thing I do wish that they could have delved a little bit more into was Miguel's kind of, because it's weird because he seems so focused on embracing like music, which we'll be getting into shortly. Like it seems like he's so focused on like, oh, I want to be a musician, and music is so, in any culture, music is a big part of it. But I wanted them to kind of explore his lack of connection with his ancestry, maybe like his lack of connection with his cultural roots. Like if that had been the case and like this experience could have helped them reconnect, like if they had made that a little bit more evident, maybe that could have been like a more compelling way to finish to end the story rather than, surprise Ernesto killed Hector. You know what I mean? Like they could have done something a little bit more complex instead of going for full drama, even though I enjoyed the melodrama.
You know what surprised me? Me that Miguel's parents were actually in the movie and they're alive and all. I kind of thought maybe they were dead.
That they were barely used.
Yeah,
they were.
I feel like because there's so many people dead in this movie, they couldn't also kill his parents. I feel like that was like, they drew a line. They're like, we cannot also kill his parents. But they're just like, I know Disney has this tendency to kill all the parents, but I feel like they, in a way, like the great grand, like Imelda and Hector were kind of like, I felt like he saw them more as parental figures than he did his actual parents in a weird way. So I feel like we still got that relationship, and they were technically dead. So it's arguable, but
I think We've been kind of going around like the third act being a little weird in some ways for each of us in different ways. And I think the biggest thing is that there were a couple of elements introduced in the first two acts that never really came back. Like I was sure in the last third of the movie that we would get this blessing thing, and we would somehow have Miguel going back and forth between the land of the living and the land of the dead over and over again, because it was so well animated, him going through these petals back into Ernesto's tomb. And you know what I mean? And then he played the guitar and he went back to the land of the dead. I thought we were going to get a little bit of that I can't speak today. I thought we were going to get a little bit of like going back and forth at the end of the movie, because I thought that would be kind of interesting because the land of the dead is really pretty. The city is really pretty, but it's much more pretty when you really have it contrasted against how not
the
as
mundanity,
pretty
of life.
Yeah, and having him go back and forth in some way might have been a really great way to show, hey, this is how gorgeous of a city we made. Because it is a really gorgeous set piece, the City of the Dead. Not to say that like all the decorations they had in the real world weren't pretty. It's just that the City of the Dead is just like a technical marvel in terms of animation. It is amazing.
I'm so excited to get to that part. You know what? I'm thinking of maybe a little plot hole. Maybe it's that how Miguel he gets punished for stealing something. But in a way, if that was Hector's guitar, then technically Miguel is taking it back in the name of his family. So he should not be punished, really, if the gods know the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of read it as like intent. So like he was intending on stealing something from someone he thought was not connected to him. Whereas in the last scene, like he knows it belongs to him. So like he knows it belongs to his family. So the intent of stealing isn't there. That's kind of how I tried to like rationalize that little potential plot hole. But something I did find interesting, and something I wish, like, okay, Coco is his great grandmother, yet we barely see her. I kind of wish like we did get a little bit more. Maybe it was like, instead of focusing so much on his relationship with his great grandfather, we would have seen like him being unable to deal with her, like with her dementia, because I don't know if it's Alzheimer's or dementia, but like she's definitely, there's something happening. She's forgetting. I thought, wish, please.
Like I thought that she was going to actually pass away in the beginning of the movie, and the adventure in the City of the Dead would be with Miguel and Coco. And I thought it would be kind of like an up story, but from the perspective of like the younger person instead of the older person. And I thought that's what we were going to get, but obviously that's not what we got. But it's because it's just so weird that the movie's named Coco, and she's just not really a huge part of it.
I'm not sure that was the original title. I'm pretty sure it had another original title.
It was called Dia de los Muertos. They were trying to name it after Day of the Dead, and they couldn't get it copyrighted because obviously they can't copyright that.
Yeah. Just in response to the whole like making that part of the story, I think that's such a big theme that like if you try focusing on that, that's like just a different movie. I think like this movie is already really packed with different themes, and I think the points that they touch on it is like they're effective on their own. Like you have the final scene, you have at the beginning the "Who are you?" joke, like fake joke, but like it's like ugh. But just like the little points that they touch on it, I think it works. But I think that if you spend too long on it, it ends up distracting from what the story they were trying to tell was. You'd have to like change some things around to make that more important.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like what, like anything that I've like thrown out in the past like 10 to 15 minutes have been like they could have done it this way, even though I love what they did. Like they could, like there were so many ways they could have handled this stuff. So the way they did, though, I did very much enjoy. Even though, as we mentioned, there for some people that end like that final act was kind of a little bit, or like the transition, I guess, from the second act to the third act was a little weak.
I think that's the best way. I think that's the best way to put it, because it's just the transition. Because I think the third act actually is pretty fun. It's just that there's a weird hiccup in the middle there.
But let's talk about the music, since
yes,
so wonderful. And you know, like I grew up listening to all sorts of Latin music, but like there's just something when I hear that like classical guitar like going, like just someone riffing, and I'm just thrown back to just being like, yeah, this music is so great, and this is just, I adored it. And the one big complaint I have, even though I know why they didn't do this, I know why, because they wanted, when Imelda sang, to make it in Spanish and make it that much more powerful when she sang, to make it in actual Spanish, because I feel like she really is the one who represents the culture and the roots. She's the one who represents that more than any of the musicians in this ironic way. The one who is most against art, or at least supposedly most against art, is the one who like represents the history and the culture of these people. The moment that she sang in Spanish, it was so powerful, but I do wish that we could have gotten a little bit more Spanish just throughout the movie, a little bit more sprinkle of that like Spanglish. Like I don't mind it being mixed with English, just give me a little bit more. Like throughout the movie I was like, why isn't there more Spanish? Like why aren't they committing to this? Just give me like just a little, like give me some song that Miguel or De La Cruz sings in Spanish. But I mean, I understand why, because there is this kind of phoniness there. And like there's that interesting kind of like speaking in another language, and the use of that kind of, they're not speaking in Spanish, and that in itself adds to this kind of superficiality in like De La Cruz and etc. I really enjoyed, but that is something I needed to mention somehow in this podcast. But tell me, guys, what did you guys think of the music? Steve, what did you think?
Oh, I really like the music's top notch. I mean, yeah, I agree. What's her name?
Imelda.
That's probably the best song of the movie. And personally, she was like one of my favorite characters in the movie too, so that kind of helps. And I did like her little backstory about how she got over losing like her husband and didn't just mope for a round. But all right, back on topic. Yeah, the music was good. Remember Me was also pretty good. But really, I love the songs though. The background music was just as good too. Was just as well too. And I'm always been a person who's really been a fan of good background music, just as important as the songs. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but yeah, as someone who knows a little bit about Latin music, whose mom plays it all the time, it's definitely something that lived up to my expectations. I really liked it, and I'm sure my mom would like it too. So.
And what about you, Andy? What did you think? I know you're excited to talk about this.
I'm really excited. I can't believe you made me wait.
My bad. I'm sorry.
No, it's for last. No, I thought you were going to make me go last, Beatriz. I was like waiting.
Oh, I mean, sure. If you want to hold off. Alex, tell me, what do you think?
No, let him go first.
Go first.
I hate you all. Um, so I really love this music, and it is just I love music. I just love it so much. I love really great soundtracks and everything, not just like musicals and stuff like that. Like I just love good soundtracks. And I am the one who comes out of the theater and I'll turn to my friends, I'll be like, that movie had an amazing soundtrack. Like I'm the guy that walked out of like How to Train Your Dragon, and I'm like, that soundtrack is going to get nominated for an Academy Award, and it did. It's just like I'm the one who's picking up on those things because they're just so good. And this movie has such a good soundtrack. And I'm not just talking about the songs that are sung. I'm saying like the entire movie has this really, really amazing through line of music that everything just tied together so well. There's themes, there's repeated melodies that just come back again and again, but they're always changed a little bit. They're always redone a little bit for the scene they're in, but you always feel the same music going on. And at the same time, they really did a great job holding off on Miguel playing the guitar, because they waited till the right moment for you to see that he actually is good at guitar. He's good at playing music and he understands music. And when he finally plays, it's just this great moment on the stage with Hector. And it just, you feel as excited as the crowd that's watching him when you hear him play, because you're invested in the music, because just subtly in the background, they've been playing the little themes that he's going to be playing on his guitar. And then he finally comes up front and he plays them. He plays what the soundtrack's been showing to us. And then on top of that, it does what every great movie with music it does, where most of the music played is in the movie organically. There's mariachi bands almost every scene. There's an orchestra during Ernesto's concert, and there's singers in the background sometimes. Like every scene is like this, and it's so good. And I think this goes into, and unfortunately put a little bit of a damper on things, because I think this is why the third act slumps a little bit for me, is that in the third act, the music changes. The music is no longer purely this Latin American like theme. There's a lot of the classic like dramatic music going on, like of just kind of indistinguishable music of just like, oh, it's the stakes are high type stuff. And that's really just during the big climax at the concert that happens right after the kind of right after the big musical number with Imelda. The song name is escaping me.
La Llorona.
Thank you. But right after that, the music kind of gets a little indistinguishable, and it kind of puts a damper on things. So I was really excited for whatever music they were going to play for the climax, and it just kind of fell flat. But other than that, the music is just so great. And I was just like, I honestly might have been paying more attention to the music in each scene than to the actual visuals. And that says a lot about the music of this movie.
Yeah. And Alex, what did you think?
Yeah, so like my thing with, I think I'm on the opposite spectrum of Andy just in terms of like movie music. Like in general, I don't really enjoy when my movie gets interrupted by songs. That's part of the reason why I've avoided Disney movies for a long time. And Pixar just kind of tricked me here, like, hey, here's a musical. But I think the songs here really worked. We've already praised La Llorona. I think like what helps with these songs is that there's like action going on around them or emotional weight to them, and that's what I prefer. Like if you're gonna give me a song, like make it meaningful, either in the emotional sense or like there's plot going on around the song at the time, rather than just like taking a break to make a song. And I think the Coco does that really well. La Llorona, you have the action of like Imelda trying to get the picture from Ernesto, and like all the movements around the stage as they're doing this really good song. Actually, the Conocemos Juanita, or I think in English it's just Everybody Knows Juanita. Like that sequence, like it's a very low key song, but it's delivered emotionally well. Like you've only met this guy in the hammock for like 5 seconds, but by the end I was like, oh, this is sad, and it's just like playing a song that was supposedly meaningful to him, even though like it's just like your classic cantina song, and all the songs work, with the exception of Un Poco Loco. Like at least to me, like I get the importance is, oh, okay, this is the first time he's playing his guitar. But the song felt a little generic. In the end, it ends up not meaning much, since he just skips over to find another way into the place, meaning the talent show was useless in the end. So, like, Un Poco Loco is the only down part of all the songs in this movie, I think.
I disagree with you so much on that, but I think we talked about that in Discord. Like that Un Poco Loco is the crux of the movie. It's the thing that pushes Miguel into being confident again about music.
And please mention what you mentioned on Discord. Don't leave the listeners hanging.
No. That's what I mentioned. I just mentioned that I liked this song a lot, not necessarily because the music. I think I agree with Alex. The song is fine. Again, we listened to a slightly different version, Alex. I listened to the English.
No, I listened to the English version. The Spanish version is slightly better, but still, It doesn't work for me.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but either way, the scene is more important here, and it's just so well done. And I think it actually comes across. Your opinion comes across. He didn't win the contest. And I think that if he had stayed, he still wouldn't have won. I think that the other band was better in terms of just art and just music. Like, he isn't great. Like, Miguel being a great musician isn't the point of this film. It's that he is really, really talented and could become great. And that he is really interested in being good at music. And that comes across in this because he respects the other musicians that he meets and the other artists he meets, Frida Kahlo, the other band that he lost to. Like, there's never a moment where Miguel feels like he's below someone, and he never feels like angry at them. He always feels like, I want to learn from them. I want to be like them. And this scene is just kind of shows just how pure he is when he's singing. Like, this is just Miguel. Miguel is the most Miguel when he's singing Un Poco Loco in this movie. That or the lullaby at the very end of the movie. Those are the times when Miguel is just the most of his character.
Anyone you feel though that talent show was kind of filler? A lot of people have been saying that online.
Well, see that's my thing. Like I get Andy's points that you're trying to show that Miguel is like gaining confidence and all. But at the same time, I guess it's just the song in particular is just something I'm not fond of. I get the point of the scene, and like I guess it works to push the story along. But like just in terms of me connecting emotionally to it, it didn't really work as much as the surrounding scenes, I guess.
And there's also the fact that I love musicals a lot more than you do. Like, I just love musicals.
Yeah, that felt the most musically part of the movie.
But I will say though, like when Steve mentioned that people have been saying that this talent show is filler, the movie starts out with Miguel wanting to perform at that plaza, at that little area, and wanting to perform in the talent show. So it's a parallel. He manages to do it just on the other side. So I don't necessarily see it as a filler. It's kind of like a ending of one story thread where he manages to perform, and then that leads him to something else, right? So I mean, I feel like that's why I wouldn't necessarily see it as a filler. But I will say that I'm glad that Alex mentioned that final song, because I was surprised that no one had mentioned "Remember Me" until Alex. I was just like, you mentioned it a little bit, but like no one like that. Like, how can anyone like?
I mentioned it at the very beginning. I mentioned it when I mentioned the plot.
Okay, at the very, very beginning. But now we're talking about the music.
Because
this is when you're supposed to talk about it.
I'm just going to step in here and say, remember me or recuérdame. Like, it's not, it's a very simple song. Like, which I think when you're thinking, like, if you're thinking just in terms of music, like, that song doesn't really stand out compared to the other songs in the movie. But just in terms of its emotional weight, like, that's what makes the song stand out. And, like, the situation where it's being sung, like both in that final scene and the lullaby scene where you're flashing back to Hector with Coco, like those two scenes are really effective, but it's like the combination of the song and the background that comes with it rather than just the song on its own, in my opinion.
You know what I wish?
Totally.
Well, I wish we had, though, maybe we had we had a flashback of Hector actually walking out on his family, like Hector and probably Ernesto's influence get him to leave his family. I kind of want to see I kind of want to see like when they're leaving, Hector, Ernesto, and Mary. What's her name again?
Imelda.
I like to see like three of them interact back when they're alive, because definitely see some like Imelda and Ernesto. Imelda does not like Ernesto. She never did like Ernesto. It definitely seems like they have an old grudge. Like, it'd be interesting to see what the relationship was like back in the day.
I mean, but they kind of did that in the beginning. Maybe not all three of them, but they did show him walking out on her in that very beginning, that montage in the very, very beginning, that little kind of sequence where Miguel is explaining that his great-great-grandfather left.
Yeah.
So we do kind of see that.
Yeah, I'm talking about later on in the movie when we find out who the great-great-grandfather is, and then we found out like what Ernesto did to Hector. I like to just maybe have seen maybe that. I have a feeling that Ernesto was the one who pushed Hector to leave his family to use his like music to gain fame and such.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of like the fact that they don't show it, because it's kind of like it's so, because it would be so devastating. Because it is so devastating, they're like, this is, in a way, it's kind of like violent. In a way, it's like, this is too much. Like, this is too ugly to see this man leave his family. We're not going to show this. Like, that's what kind of why, for me, I was like, my rationalization of why they didn't want to see it was because, like, who could ever leave this adorable little girl? But he did. And, I feel like blaming Ernesto for him leaving may have been.
I'm not saying Hector like not at fault, not taking responsibility. I'm just
no, totally. But I'm just saying that, like, I don't know. I feel like maybe Ernesto was like he kept him like away as long as he did. But I feel like there's something very powerful and very upsetting about him leaving in his own will, out of like him leaving, period. So I like that.
And he definitely made it clear that he left on his own. Hector made the decision to leave.
Well, I never said Ernesto put a gun to his head or anything and forced him out. I'm just saying maybe, just maybe influenced him a little bit to, like maybe have a moment like past, like he was talking about, I don't know if I can leave my little girl and my wife, and Ernesto maybe talks him into like saying, you're doing it for them. You're getting fame and fortune. You're going to provide for them and stuff.
Well, while we're on the subject of Imelda and Hector, like I do want to mention, looping back to what we mentioned earlier about like the female representation in this movie. Like in the third act, Imelda gets a much bigger role in the whole saving of Hector. I found interesting, like there's the line where she mentions like, I don't forgive you, but I am going to help you. And I was like, okay, cool. Like you're showing some kind of like agency. Like just because he shows up doesn't mean you have to forgive him. Like that if you still have that grudge, it's fine. But then it just like, it goes back into like kind of cliche Disney thing. It's like, okay, well I fall back in love with you. Okay, everything's all right. And like that part kind of disappointed me. Like I would have been more impressed with the movie if they stuck to, well, I don't forgive you. We're going to help you. But that doesn't change what you did to us. Like, at least to me, I would have found that a more interesting narrative decision if they stuck with that.
Interesting. Like, I kind of saw it as, like, when he left her, like, she never stopped love. Like, because love is such a complex emotion. Like, I felt like it was more like she never stopped loving him, and she never remarried. But it was just, like, she never stopped loving him, and but she was very angry with him, and I think it was just like when they finally met again, because I'm assuming that they didn't run into each other again. Please.
Yeah, I like though that even after she found out that he was murdered, she was still mad at him. It still like did not say excuse that. Oh, you were murdered. You were on your way back. She still was like mad at him. So.
Yeah. I think them meeting again. Like, her forgiving him eventually, like, again, she was angry. I feel like she may have loved him, but she was angry with him for the rest of her life and onto her death and onto her afterlife. So I feel like meeting him again and then learning of all that, I can see why they could have gone with a not forgiving route and done something, I guess, less cliche, but I could also see, like, I could also see her still have loved him, and then seeing him again, just bringing all that back.
Yeah, it's definitely justifiable, but it ended up being the expected way for the story to go.
Totally. And, what I mean with, like, female representation, I said that in the very beginning. Like, yes, I wanted more Imelda, and we did get more of her in the end. But I kind of wished, in a way, like, there could have also been this emphasis between, like, the relationship between Miguel and her. Like, I wish there was more exploration of their relationship, because a lot of times we just see this constant thing where it's like we always have like the father-son relationship. Like in so many films, that's the main thing explored. Like the mother is usually the sacrificed lamb who gives up everything, but we never explore her. Like when, I like that Miguel in the beginning, in the very beginning, he was like, she kept our family together and she just made everything happen and it was great. Like I was like, awesome, Imelda's amazing. But like, I don't know, I just felt like I wish that there would have been maybe a little bit more exploration of his connection with her. A little bit more.
I know, but on top of that, all the women in this movie are really, before like the end of the third act, they're all portrayed as just huge jerks. Like they're just portrayed as like the worst thing ever. And a part of it is the fact that we're seeing it from Miguel's eyes. Like that is definitely coloring things, but that's still the movie we were shown here, that these women, they're wrong, that they're just wrong. None of their opinions are right here in a lot of this movie. And that's just kind of really bad in a lot of ways. Like, just remember, they're all women in one family, though.
I mean, there is this interesting kind of, they create this interesting binary between like the woman, the feminine, the mother. She represents the home. She represents the family. Whereas the men, the father, they represent the dream. They represent the excitement, the experience, the going after something. And it's just kind of like the man represents the individual while the woman represents the collective, which is a binary that's very restrictive. For me, I was like, okay, like, it's been like recorded through history, like that, like in history, there's been this link with like women and like and culture, and like the women are the ones who teach the children the culture, and they've become like, but it is restrictive and it is kind of a little frustrating to see, but I don't know, like, there is one counter. There's only one counter to what you've said.
And that's Frida. I know you're going to say.
And it's Frida. Yeah. And it's Frida, and she's my favorite character in this.
And that's why I really think that this is shown this way, because it's from Miguel's perspective. As soon as we see a woman who's not in his family, they're portrayed very differently. So I really do think it's just that Miguel sees his abuelita and Imelda as just people who are just wrong, and they're just telling him the wrong things, and he needs to do something else with his life.
Also, Miguel is just attracted to anyone with artistic tendencies, and his family does not. So there you go. That's also the other half and half we get here.
I don't know about you guys. When I heard the backstory of the family at the beginning of the movie, I admired the hell out of Mildred. I admired the hell of her story. She's someone I could look up to. How she kept the family together. She tried this shoe empire, and I don't know how you guys.
Shoe empire.
Yeah.
I kind of love that. I'm like, yeah, you make it work, and I kind of love how they still kept going with the shoe empire, despite the fact that they're now making money out of tourism in the end. Like, they're still going with their shoes. Like, they are passionate about those shoes, and I'm like, you be passionate.
Hey,
that's great.
Cobbling is a good business.
Yeah. Does anyone know, like, what time period this takes place in?
I think this is supposed to be fairly modern. At least, because there is a VCR player that Miguel has before introduced a TV VCR player, and somehow nobody's noticed that he's taken these things. So it must be at least fairly modern.
And this is standard definition TV. Though I'm not sure, though, maybe if this is trying to put like a stereotype in Mexico being more third world, maybe.
It is definitely going for the rural Mexican town, because like I've lived in a town like this, and only like 5 years ago with people who have these the clay houses and the old TVs. So there's still parts of Mexico that are like this, but you're right that it does extend a bit of a stereotype if you want to look at it.
But not all like Latin America places are so behind the times. It's
right.
Stereotype.
Well, I mean, like, it isn't necessarily like rural doesn't necessarily mean behind the times. I also want to make that distinction. Like, rural can just simply mean like, you know, it's just
not in the
you're
city.
Kind of more you're out of the city, you're more in the wilderness, so maybe the Wi-Fi connection isn't the greatest, so you only have one computer that has like the only solid signal in the area. You know what I mean? Like, we need to make sure that it's clear that rural doesn't mean like behind.
Right.
Also, I think there was a big point here to this movie that to not have internet, because I think that introduces a lot more musical influences to Miguel, and it was really important that the musical influences to him were purely these Latin American ones. Because I think if you had Wi-Fi, there would be a lot more different music here. But just the fact that he had just these local bands and Ernesto to learn from, it really affected the music of this entire movie, and it was really well done.
Totally. And I kind of love how it's like, because, you know, like the whole digitization of music, like, you know how, like, you can just have a computer now making a guitar sound. So I really like how, like, I feel like in a way technology kind of, it was important for them to kind of make it focus more maybe like 90s era, you know, where it's like VHS is still there, or early 2000s where like these programs in computers and like all like laptops weren't all available and easy access to some people and stuff. So
speaking of the modernization, like something that stood out to me in the scene where Miguel enters Ernesto's party, it's like Mexican music, but it's got a little injection of like more modern like boom 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 noises.
Yeah.
So I actually like that as like a little twist to like that's how Mexican party music nowadays would be. Like if you go into a club in Mexico City, maybe that's what you're playing. I don't know, but I just like that there are these little twists of like a little modern injections into the musical selections here.
That is like one of my favorite musical transitions, because he's walking through the party and it's just the normal background music that's going on through the movie, and he steps through the door and this music doesn't change, but it's injected with what you said, like those electronic noises just kind of mix in. It's like when you're playing a video game, you walk from one area to the next and the music kind of shifts a little bit, but it's still the same song you're listening to. It's really cool. It was really well done.
Totally. Do you guys have any final thoughts about animation, the animation or the look of the movie before I ask you the hardest question tonight?
The animation was gorgeous. I don't know if there's anything else to say. Like the City of the Dead, that first reveal of the city was probably one of the most amazing shots I've seen Pixar make. Like if I could stare at that shot forever. Like there's so many like buses and cars and people walking around that it just doesn't seem possible that they animated that whole thing.
Something really interesting for someone, if anyone wants to, if anyone's willing to go to the theater early, sometimes they show little like first looks on like TV shows or something, and they have one for Coco, and they show how they make that scene. They show how they made that.
I hated that they showed it before the movie, though. They didn't.
Yeah, that is true.
Like, don't show me the best like shot of the movie before I watch it, please.
Very true. But, I mean, maybe it's available online, so if people want to, after seeing the movie,
it's really worth it. It's
up.
really insane when they put into numbers what they put into that scene, because it's kind of incredible. Yeah. I think they uttered 8.5 million lights in that thing. Like, and I believe it. That scene is just filled with multicolored lights.
Yep. Okay, so now for the hardest question, which anyone who's part of the Facebook group, which, by the way, you guys should be, as anyone part of it will know, I stole this question from Dylan. Is Coco the best Pixar film of the last few years? Let's start with Alex.
Maybe you should list the movies of the last few years for the listeners that we're choosing.
All right, fine. All right, so we got The Good Dinosaur, we got Cars 3, we have Inside Out, we have Coco, and I'm forgetting one. Which one?
Finding Dory.
Finding Dory. Oh, man, I'm so sorry, Ellen. I am so sorry. Forgive me,
Ellen. How could you?
I'm so sorry. Okay, see, it makes sense because I forgot it. So it's like it all ties in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Alex, do you think this is the best Pixar film in the last few years?
I still give the disclosure. I haven't watched the Cars sequels or The Good Dinosaur, so I'm just judging between Inside Out and Finding Dory. I think I give the edge to Inside Out. I think that when I'm looking for Pixar, I'm looking for emotionally affecting, and I think Inside Out just works better. Like Coco, while I found it all very comfortable to watch, the emotional points weren't as high as Inside Out. I didn't get a teary scene, whereas Inside Out, I did get a bit teary, at least for me, with joy breaking down and all. But Coco, it's a fun movie, and I think overall in Pixar, it is top half. I'll give it that much, but I don't think it surpasses Inside Out.
Interesting, Steve. Yeah. What about you?
Not sure. I really liked Finding Dory. So that might be my favorite, but Inside Out is an excellent movie. And Coco, I feel though it just came out. It's just gonna take a while for me to really rank it to see if it has this stands the test of time. but I'm not much of a Pixar buff like you guys are, so it's a little harder for me. So, but it's definitely not Cars. Like Cars, like
Wait, so in the end, did you rank Coco third out of Inside Out and Finding Dory?
No, I'm just saying. I'm not sure. Okay, yeah. I think Coco might be the best one so far, but maybe I'm not sure though if I disqualify myself since I'm in the moment of just seeing the movie. But
I do think that this movie has a lot of like details in it, and I think it's one that would benefit from rewatch, and probably it might improve in my look if I give it a second watch. But just going by the first time watching is where I'm making this ranking right now. But I do think this is definitely a rewatchable film.
Yeah.
All right. And Andrew, what about you? What do you think?
I'm in a similar place as Steve, where I liked Coco a lot, but I just saw the movie like 2 days ago or yesterday, and this is a really good movie. I want to make sure it's clear. I think Coco is a really good movie, no matter what I say here. But Inside Out's a little longer to sit with me, and I relate to Inside Out and the themes of that movie a little bit more than Coco. But Inside Out also feels like a really, really safe movie, other than a couple of little parts of it. Like, it has the same kind of Pixar humor that other Pixar movies has. It has the same buttons it presses as every other Pixar movie. But Coco strays from that a little bit. The humor is a little different. The humor is a little more adult in some places and a little more subtle in others. And it's also just the themes are a little more out there, and they still make you cry at the end, but they do it in a very different than normal Pixar way, because usually Pixar just knows the buttons to push. They know the music to play. They know the things that people cry about. But this one, it's like they made you cry because you had just watched this entire family go through something, and here's the end result. Here is what's going on. Like, they built up to the moment that they usually just kind of shove in your face randomly during the movie. And I think it was really well done. And so right now, I think I'm inclined to say Coco is better, but I think after I let it sit longer, that might change. But it did a lot of things that were really good and different from other Pixar movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm aware that this is an impossible question. This is like, I don't, like, it's been so long since I've seen Inside Out that I need to rewatch it to have it fresh to actually decide. And I'd have to rewatch that one and then rewatch Coco to figure out which of the two would go on top of the other. Because here's the thing, like, Inside Out made me teary, but I cried way more in Coco. Like, Coco.
Oh, I was the opposite.
Like, for me,
same.
Like, not to say that Inside Out didn't make me cry. I'm still human, people.
Tears are not always votes. This is just one barometer.
Exactly. I'm just saying, like Coco just touched me in such a way. And I think it's also because like I lost a couple family members this past year. So it's just like, it just really like, it hit every like emotional button for me that I was just like, oh God, like this movie I was not prepared for. And it just kind of, I guess it meant more for me to watch this movie in terms of healing, in terms of emotion. It did so much more for me. And also, again, even though it's Mexican culture, like there's still certain things in there that fit with the wider Latin culture and are similar to Venezuelan culture that just really hit me and struck me in such a way that I might give the advantage to Coco, possibly. Again, I have to watch Inside Out again. And, for people who haven't seen Cars 3, look, Finding Dory is great. It's not as good as Finding Nemo, and I think that's the main problem, is that Finding Dory came after Finding Nemo, and that's why it's not as good as it should be. But with Cars 3, it was really Cars 3 does a really good job. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, it's Cars 3, whatever. But it's really good. So not to make people think that every other movie beside Inside Out and Coco are not worth seeing. They are, but
these are just in a different tier.
Yeah, they're just no, because I don't know. I feel like Cars 3 might also be in that tier. Just it's that there's this one scene that's so incredible in Cars 3 that kind of brought it to another level. So Yeah, I think I'm gonna go.
But yeah, I think you've hit on something with like there are just very different themes we're hanging on here because Inside Out deals with like the internal emotions, whereas Coco handles more like family. And I think those are just two things that, while they're related, but I think there's a huge audience that will only relate to one side of that, and another huge part that will only relate to the other side of that. So like it definitely depends on what life situation you're in terms of emotional impact.
Totally. And there is one thing though, like Inside Out, like, and usually this rarely happens. Usually if I see a movie, I always think like the lead should always be a girl. I always think that. I'm like, why isn't the lead a girl? I don't know why. It's just my instinct to always think that. But in Inside Out, the opposite happened. I wished that Inside Out had been about a boy instead. Because, like, again, we're talking about Inside Out right now, but I have to express this somehow. So it's somewhere. Like, Inside Out, like, there's a lot of, like, stigma against boys crying and embracing sadness. And I just feel like Inside Out could have, like, been this completely powerful other film if Riley had been a boy.
I agree because my mom watched Inside Out and she thought the movie was just about being sad. And like, there's a lot more than her just being sad here, Mom. Like, this isn't just like the stereotypical girl crying thing. Like, there's a lot more here. Like, there is like mental illness going on here that they were trying to imply, and a lot of people just missed that because it was just a young girl crying. And I think you're right. If it was a boy, it would have been. We're getting way too into Inside Out, but I agree with you. It should have been a boy.
But, both movies made me cry, so
exactly. Yes. like any good solid Pixar film, it's supposed to make you cry. If it makes you cry, it's something.
I disagree, but yeah.
What?
Like, Alex also a soulless person. So
yes. This is also important to point out.
but yeah. That's about it. Does anyone have any final thoughts about Coco before we wrap up?
I just want to say we haven't gushed enough about Hector. Like, I think he's the star of this movie, and we barely talked about him. Like, from the very beginning, like the Frida Kahlo gag of him dressing up and trying to get out and being desperate to get out. Like that's funny from the very beginning. He's got just his like carefreeness. Gael Garcia Bernal like really delivers the lines well of just like, I don't really care about anything. I'm in it for myself. Then you have the amazing scene where he's with the guy in the hammock and he has to sing to him to get his guitar. And just like the one shot of him like taking the shot of tequila in the dark, like that was like dark. It just felt way too dark for a Pixar movie, but I loved it. And him just being emotional in the end, and like you get going through his backstory and seeing him react to the like him figuring out that he was poisoned. Like, just all of Hector I loved in this movie, and I think he's what makes this movie work, in my opinion.
Oh.
Yeah, Hector was so good. And to go back to that shot thing, like the where he like the fact that the shot glasses were mismatched and the one was still full at the end, like that was just a really powerful shot when they just pulled back and they left the room empty. Like, I thought it was a really powerful scene too.
Also, like the final shot of this movie is Hector taking by the hand Coco and Imelda, and then the rest of the family going together. Like, that made me more emotional than the actual singing of "Remember Me." Like, that final shot of Hector finally getting to have his family together. Like, that to me affected me the most. Like, okay, finally you have justice. You have your life there. So, like, at least to me, like that just wrapped up the movie perfectly for me.
I will say, like, something that when you mentioned Hector is that, like, this film I was surprised that this film didn't go further into kind of the immigration kind of theme, because, that's what kind of Hector starts to do in the beginning, is kind of to illegally, like, get through and just, like, try to, like, because he's desperate. And I kind of wish they kind of, like, explored that a little bit more, but I do agree that he's by far, I think, the strongest character of this story, and he's wonderful. Like, Miguel is great, and I adore him, but and the voice actor's performance is wonderful too. But definitely, like, Hector is he's the more complex. Of course, he will be because he's the adult, but he's the more complex kind of one that allows kind of the more adult themes to kind of come in. He's the vessel for those more complicated adult themes to come in, and I really loved his stuff. Yeah, Steve.
I agree. Hector stole the show, started the movie. one thing I do want to get into, ask, was Dante, was he a spirit all along? They're not clear.
Yeah, how have we never mentioned Dante?
Oh,
This is
yeah.
a good call.
He was
We've not mentioned
useless.
Dante once.
I will say I was
no Spian, that's for sure, but still.
it's interesting that Alex says he's useless because I was expecting him to kind of like do more, do a little bit more. But I guess when you see that like huge panther like animal next to him, it's like, okay, I can understand why.
I loved the panther. The panther was so pretty.
So pretty.
And then it becoming a little kitty cat at the end. Like, it was so cute.
Yeah, so that's why I was like, Dante, like, you gotta step it up. You gotta give me
Dante, gotta step it up, doggo.
He's got to. I was like, maybe he could do, like, I was like waiting for some sort of like funny reference to like Dante's Inferno or something. Cause like the name Dante is, because the name Dante is so on the nose. That was just I was waiting for like, I don't know, like instead of, what's the name of the panther? Oh, what's her name?
Pepita.
Pepita. I was waiting for her instead to be called Beatrice, just so like something funny would happen between Dante and Beatrice. Like, I don't know. I was just like waiting for something, and it just didn't happen. And I was just like, come on, like Dante, like do something funny. But no, they didn't take advantage of him as much as I don't know.
I do like how subtle it was that Miguel named Dante after Ernesto's horse. Like, it wasn't touched on for a long time, but it was just in the background.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
I didn't even catch that.
Oh, in the party, the movies playing, the movies at Ernesto's party, Ernesto's on a horse and he says, "Go, Dante, go." He's on, and it's just gone. If you blink, you miss it. And that's why Dante.
I love how the grandma says, "Don't name a dog, or he'll just stay attached to you forever." Like,
it's true. She's not wrong.
Yeah, but yeah, Dante grew on me throughout the movie. At first, I found him very annoying and kind of useless, but as the movie gone on, he grew on me.
So you too take in stray dogs, huh?
I'm just saying. At first, I found him like he's more of a hindrance. He's the one getting Miguel all this trouble. More so Dante. Like Miguel probably would have gotten away with a lot more stuff if Dante wasn't around.
He played what was the chicken's name from Moana? He played a very similar role to that chicken, but a little bit less comedic. Yeah. It was very strange what he was meant to be in the movie, but I liked Dante. It was pretty cute. Yeah. I didn't get a chance to bring up one thing. We didn't get a chance to talk about Frida Kahlo for a long time, but I was very surprised at the length of her part in this movie.
Yeah, please continue.
And I was very surprised. I won't get too into it because of the rating of this podcast, but I was surprised.
Innuendo.
The innuendos that were made with her. I was surprised because I was like, they're not going to bring actual Frida Kahlo into this because her art is a little bit risque for this kind of movie. But they did it. They went full Frida Kahlo with some of this art, and I was very impressed and surprised by it.
Papaya and cactus milk. You
look
make
at that
the connection.
But yeah, I think unless there's anything else you guys want to say, last chance. I think we're gonna end it here. We're going on for over an hour. We gotta
talk
end
as much about this movie as the movie lasted.
Basically.
Two final things. We also had them saying that Hector choked on chorizo, which is a sausage.
My God, yes.
So choking on sausage, make of that what you will. Also, the El Santo, who is a famous luchador, he made a cameo and I noticed that very quickly for some reason, and I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Well, yeah, let's try to see if we can stretch this out to 90 minutes. But that was a fun movie. I just a question the timeline though. It says El Santo, the villain's name. I forget his name now. He died like in the 1940s. It means like the great grandparents or like their time was the 1940s. Isn't that like a little like too recent? I mean, wouldn't be maybe the 20s make more sense? I mean,
maybe. Also, Mexican families are known to like have children young, so you could work with genealogies around.
Yeah.
That was 80 years ago.
80 years, well, almost 80 years. It's 2017 now, so it's
yes, but almost 80 years ago, so there's time.
I can't say it's magic, so I'm just like, it's a Pixar movie. I'll allow them to bend time if they need it. But But yeah, find out all the information on this podcast at overlyanimated.com. Join us on Discord to text chat about animation at overlyanimated.com/Discord. Support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to all of our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Michael, aka Wazowski. And thanks, as always, to our Patreon executive producers, John, Ryan, Steve, Alex, and Andy. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
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 Adios.
Adios.